Picture this. You're digging through a dusty jar of old coins on a quiet evening, and suddenly a small 5-cent piece catches the light in a way that feels different, heavier with history, sharper in detail, and you realize you might be holding one of the most valuable secrets in American pocket change, because the 1939 D. Jefferson nickel, the very first year of the series, marked the beginning of a legacy, and in pristine condition, it can command astonishing prices, while the legendary 1940 D/S mintmark error hides a tiny but powerful mistake that collectors obsess over, turning an ordinary nickel into a treasure worth thousands. And then comes the wartime 1941 through 1946 silver alloy nickels, especially the rare 1947 P with a bold doubled eye or dramatic die cracks born from World War II necessity, when nickel metal was needed for the war effort and silver took its place, creating coins that carry both patriotic history and premium value. And just when you think the surprises are over, the elusive 1950 D. Jefferson nickel emerges a low mintage key date that once sparked a nationwide roll-hunting frenzy and still stands as a cornerstone of serious collections, today proving that even a humble 5-cent coin can hold stories of economic shifts, minting errors, wartime sacrifice, and collector madness. So before you spend that old nickel, ask yourself, could this tiny piece of metal be one of the top 4 rare Jefferson nickels hiding life-changing value in plain sight? The year 1939 marked a turning point in American coinage history because it introduced the Jefferson nickel, which replaced the long-running Buffalo nickel that had been in circulation since 1913. By the late 1930s, the Buffalo design was worn down easily and difficult to strike clearly, which caused constant problems for the United States Mint. Officials decided it was time for a new design that would honor an important American figure while also being practical for mass production. Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States and the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, was selected as the new face of the 5-cent coin. A public design competition was announced, and sculptor Felix Schlag won with his elegant portrait of Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello Jefferson's Virginia home on the reverse. However, Schlag was required to modify his original reverse design to include clearer lettering and a more formal appearance before final approval. The Jefferson nickel was first struck in 1938, but the 1939 issue became historically significant because it was the first year the coin entered full nationwide circulation and became familiar to the American public. The obverse featured a left-facing profile of Thomas Jefferson with the word Liberty, and the date placed neatly to the right, while the motto, "In God We Trust," appeared along the left rim. The reverse showcased Monticello with fine architectural detail, including steps and columns, which later became important for collectors. Early 1939 nickels were struck at 3 mints, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and each mint produced coins with slight differences in strike quality and surface texture. Philadelphia coins carried no mint mark, while Denver used a D and San Francisco used an S beneath Monticello. The year 1939 also became famous among collectors due to the creation of one of the most valuable Jefferson nickel varieties ever produced, known as the 1939 doubled Monticello reverse. This error occurred when the reverse die was impressed twice at slightly different angles, causing visible doubling on the words Monticello and 5 cents. At the time, these coins circulated unnoticed and were spent like ordinary nickels. But decades later, collectors discovered the variety and its importance skyrocketed. Today, a genuine 1939 doubled Monticello nickel in high grade can be worth thousands of dollars, making it one of the key treasures in the entire Jefferson nickel series. Another important variety from this year was the 1939 reverse of 1940 nickel. During the transition between die designs, some 1939 nickels were struck using a reverse die that was intended for the following year. This resulted in sharper details and slightly altered lettering compared to the standard 1939 reverse. These transitional coins reflect the constant experimentation and refinement happening at the mint as officials tried to improve the durability and clarity. Of the new design, such varieties provide a fascinating glimpse into the behind-the-scenes processes of American coin production during the late 1930s. Historically, the release of the 1939 Jefferson nickel occurred during a tense period in world history. The United States was still recovering from the Great Depression, and global events were moving toward the outbreak of World War II. Everyday Americans used these nickels to buy bread, newspapers, and small necessities, while the world around them was rapidly changing. The coin became a silent witness to history, passing through countless hands in factories, farms, and city streets. Its simple copper-nickel composition made it durable and practical for daily commerce, while its design quietly celebrated American ideals and leadership. Collectors today view the 1939 Jefferson nickel as a cornerstone of the series, not only because of its varieties, but because it represents the moment when a new era of American coinage truly began. It was the year when the public fully accepted the Jefferson design, and when the mint began refining techniques that would carry the series through decades of production. From worn pocket change to carefully preserved mint state examples, the 1939 Jefferson nickel tells a story of transition, innovation, and national identity. Its legacy continues to grow as new generations of collectors search rolls and collections, hoping to discover one of its famous varieties and connect with a small but powerful piece of American history. As the 1939 Jefferson nickel continued to circulate, it slowly became part of everyday American life, and many people did not immediately notice the change from the buffalo nickel, even though the new design carried a very different personality. Where the buffalo nickel symbolized the frontier and rugged expansion, the Jefferson nickel reflected stability, intellect, and government leadership, which matched the mood of a nation trying to rebuild confidence after years of economic hardship. Banks and businesses distributed millions of these coins, and children growing up in the late 1930s and early 1940s often remembered Jefferson's calm face as one of the first coins they learned to recognize. Mint production in 1939 revealed early challenges with striking the Monticello steps clearly and evenly. The fine horizontal lines at the base of the building were especially difficult to bring out using the existing minting equipment. As a result, many 1939 nickels show weak steps or flat details, even when the rest of the coin appears well struck. This weakness later became a major factor for collectors who began valuing coins with fully visible steps far higher than ordinary examples. The term full steps would eventually become a key grading designation, but its roots trace directly back to the striking problems first seen in 1939. During this time, the Philadelphia Mint produced the highest number of Jefferson nickels, followed by Denver and San Francisco. Yet despite large mintages, high-quality survivors from all three mints remain surprisingly scarce today. Many coins were heavily used during the war years that followed, and nickel coins were constantly in motion, buying food stamps, transit rides, and small essentials. Few people thought to save rolls of brand-new Jefferson nickels because they were not precious metals and were seen as purely functional money. As the 1940s progressed, collectors began paying closer attention to the 1939 issues, especially after numismatic publications started reporting the discovery of the doubled Monticello variety. This sparked renewed interest in roll searching and coin hunting long before it became popular again in modern times. Collectors examined pocket change and bank rolls under magnifying glasses, hoping to find the distinctive doubled lettering on the reverse. This search helped establish Jefferson nickels as a serious collectible series rather than just spare change. The historical importance of the 1939 Jefferson nickel also lies in how it influenced later modifications to the design. Mint engravers continued adjusting relief depth, lettering spacing, and die preparation techniques throughout the early 1940s in response to wear and striking complaints. Lessons learned from the first few years, including 1939, directly shaped the more consistent strikes seen in later decades. In this way, the 1939 nickel acted as a foundation upon which the entire long-running Jefferson series was built. By the time World War II began, the 1939 Jefferson nickel had already become familiar and trusted, and when wartime silver alloy nickels were introduced in 1942, collectors later looked back at the original copper-nickel issues like 1939 as symbols of the pre-war era. These coins represented a final moment of normalcy before rationing, metal shortages, and dramatic changes to American industry. Holding a 1939 Jefferson nickel today is like holding a quiet artifact from the calm before the storm. In modern numismatics, the 1939 Jefferson nickel continues to grow in importance because it combines historical significance, collectible varieties, and technical challenges. Grading services carefully examine step detail, strike sharpness, and surface preservation, and prices rise dramatically for coins that meet the highest standards. While millions were once struck, only a tiny fraction survive in premium condition, making them prized additions to advanced collections. This enduring appeal ensures that the story of the 1939 Jefferson nickel is far from over. Each year, new collectors discover its history, and experts continue studying die varieties, mint records, and production techniques. The coin stands as a reminder that even small everyday objects can carry deep historical meaning and lasting cultural impact. As decades passed, the 1939 Jefferson nickel quietly transformed from an ordinary piece of pocket change into a historical artifact studied by collectors and historians alike. Many of these coins spent years buried in jars, drawers, and forgotten savings before being rediscovered during periods of renewed interest in coin collecting, especially during the coin boom of the 1950s, when Americans began pulling older coins from circulation in large numbers. During this time, people realized that early Jefferson nickels, like those from 1939, were becoming harder to find in clean condition because most had already suffered heavy wear. The rise of third-party grading in later decades further changed how the 1939 Jefferson nickel was viewed and valued. Professional graders began carefully analyzing strike-quality luster and surface marks, and special attention was given to the Monticello steps, which became the defining feature for premium examples. Coins graded with full steps from 1939 were found to be extremely rare, especially from the Denver and San Francisco mints, and this rarity pushed prices higher and strengthened the coin's reputation as a serious collectible rather than a common nickel. Another fascinating chapter in the history of the 1939 Jefferson nickel involves die usage and longevity. Because the mint was still learning how best to produce the new design, many dies were used longer than ideal, leading to progressive die wear that can be observed today. Some coins show mushy details or distorted lettering, while others struck early from fresh dies display crisp features and strong architectural lines on Monticello. These differences allow modern collectors to study the life cycle of a single die and understand the pressures faced by mint workers during this transitional period. Cultural memory also plays an important role in the legacy of the 1939 Jefferson nickel. For many families, these coins were part of wartime childhood memories passed down through stories rather than metal. Grandparents often recall carrying Jefferson nickels in their pockets during the early 1940s, using them for candy streetcar fares or small luxuries during uncertain times. These personal connections elevate the coin beyond its metal content and transform it into a vessel of lived experience. As numismatic research expanded, scholars began comparing the Jefferson nickel to earlier and later coin designs to understand shifts in American identity. The choice of Jefferson emphasized intellect, democracy, and statesmanship rather than military power or frontier symbolism. This decision reflected a nation seeking unity and stability during global unrest. The 1939 issue stands at the heart of this transition, making it an important cultural marker as much as a monetary one. Today, the 1939 Jefferson nickel continues to inspire new generations of collectors who study mint reports, auction records, and surviving population data. Advanced collectors pursue complete 1939 sets, including all mint marks, varieties, and reverse types, while others focus solely on finding a single high-grade example. With strong steps and original luster, each approach keeps the coin alive within the modern hobby. The ongoing fascination with the 1939 Jefferson nickel proves that even coins once ignored can gain new life through research, discovery, and storytelling. Its journey from everyday change to prized collectible mirrors, the evolution of American numismatics itself, and ensures that this small 5-cent piece will remain an enduring subject of study, discussion, and admiration for years to come. The Jefferson nickel of 1940 belongs to an important transition era in American coinage, when the nation was slowly emerging from the Great Depression and standing on the edge of global conflict. The coin carried the familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, a design first introduced in 1938 created by sculptor Felix Schlag. After a public competition, the goal was to replace the long-running Buffalo nickel and present a cleaner, more classical image. Jefferson was chosen as a symbol of democracy, intellect, and the founding ideals of the United States. And by 1940, his image had already become familiar to the public, appearing calm, thoughtful, and dignified, facing left with strong classical features that reflected neoclassical artistic traditions popular at the time. The reverse of the coin featured Monticello Jefferson's Virginia home, a symbol of American Enlightenment architecture and personal achievement. By 1940, small design refinements had already been made to Schlag's original concept, most notably strengthening the steps of Monticello and improving the lettering so the coin would strike more clearly in mass production. In 1940, the United States Mint struck Jefferson nickels at 3 facilities, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, reflecting the growing demand for circulating coinage as economic activity increased. Mintages were healthy, especially at Philadelphia, which produced the largest share. Denver and San Francisco issues served the western regions, and today collectors study these mint marks closely because condition rarity varies by location. The coins were composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, the same alloy used since the 19th century, giving the coin durability and a pale silver-gray appearance. The 5-cent denomination remained essential for daily transactions during this period, paying for streetcar rides, newspapers, candy, and basic necessities in an era when every cent still mattered to working families. The year 1940 is especially interesting because it represents the last full peacetime year of Jefferson nickel production before the United States entered World War II. Although war had already engulfed Europe, American industry was beginning to shift toward defense production, and metals such as nickel were increasingly seen as strategic resources. This looming reality gives the 1940 Jefferson nickel historical weight, because just 2 years later the mint would alter the composition of the 5-cent coin to conserve nickel for the war effort, resulting in the famous wartime silver nickels from 1942 to 1945. The 1940 issue therefore stands as part of the final chapter of traditional copper-nickel 5-cent pieces before wartime necessity reshaped American coinage. From a collecting perspective, the 1940 Jefferson nickel is known for relatively strong strikes compared to some later years, especially from the Philadelphia Mint. However, full steps on Monticello remain. The key point of interest for advanced collectors, the steps represent the staircase leading to Monticello, and when fully visible, they indicate a sharp strike. Coins with 5 or 6 full steps are scarcer and can command significant premiums, particularly in high mint state grades. Many 1940 nickels entered circulation immediately and saw heavy use, so surviving examples with strong detail, clean fields, and original luster are increasingly difficult to find. Culturally, the Jefferson nickel of 1940 circulated through a society in transition. Americans were listening to radio dramas, swing music, and news broadcasts about events overseas. Children carried nickels to school to buy lunches or comic books, and soldiers in training camps used them at canteens and payphones. The coin passed through countless hands, silently witnessing the last moments of American isolationism before the nation was drawn into global war. This everyday object connects modern collectors and viewers to ordinary lives of the past, making it more than just metal, but a historical artifact of lived experience. Over time, the 1940 Jefferson nickel has gained appreciation, not because it is rare in absolute terms, but because of what it represents: a bridge between eras, the refinement of early Jefferson nickel design, pre-war American industry, and the calm before one of the most transformative periods in modern history for YouTube audiences. This coin offers a story that blends art, economics, politics, and daily life, showing how even a small 5-cent piece can carry the weight of a nation's past. And as collectors continue to search rolls, albums, and collections, the 1940 Jefferson nickel remains a quiet reminder of America on the edge of change. As the 1940 Jefferson nickel continued to circulate across the United States, it became part of the rhythm of everyday American life, during a time when confidence was slowly returning after years of economic hardship. Factories were rehiring workers, farms were stabilizing, and cities were growing. Again, nickels like those dated 1940 moved through pay envelopes, grocery counters, and bus terminals, representing small but meaningful purchasing power. The design of the coin was intentionally simple and dignified, which helped it age gracefully in circulation. Even as surfaces wore down, Jefferson's portrait remained recognizable, reinforcing the idea of stability and continuity that Americans valued during uncertain times. At the United States Mint, the production of the 1940 Jefferson nickel reflected advancements in minting technology. Presses were more efficient. Dies were prepared with greater consistency, and quality control was improving compared to earlier decades. Yet the mint still faced challenges. Die wear was common and overused. Dies sometimes caused weak details, particularly on Monticello's steps. This is why collectors today often study multiple examples from the same year looking for differences in sharpness, texture, and strike character. These variations tell a hidden story of how hard the dies worked and how quickly demand for coinage pushed production schedules. The Denver and San Francisco mint issues of 1940 developed distinct personalities. Over time, Denver coins often show slightly softer strikes, but can display excellent luster when well preserved. San Francisco coins sometimes reveal lighter strikes and a more granular surface texture due to planche preparation and striking pressure. These subtle regional traits are part of what makes Jefferson nickel collecting so engaging, because each mint left its own fingerprint on the coin, even though the design was identical. By the early 1940s, public awareness of world events was growing, and although the coin itself did not change the context around it, people who handled a 1940 Jefferson nickel in later years may have done so while reading headlines about Pearl Harbor rationing or enlistment notices. This means that the same coin minted in peacetime quickly became part of a wartime economy, traveling through a nation mobilizing for conflict. Gasoline and food rationing increased the importance of small change, and nickels were often used repeatedly rather than being saved, making high-grade survivors more scarce today. From an artistic standpoint, Felix Schlag's design began to receive both praise and criticism during this period. Some admired its clean, neoclassical look, while others felt the reverse lacked depth and drama compared to the bold imagery of the buffalo nickel. Nonetheless, the Jefferson nickel proved durable, practical, and easy to strike, which mattered greatly to the mint. As production demands rose, the 1940 issue sits within the early phase of the series before major hub changes in later decades, making it appealing to collectors who prefer the original look of the design. As decades passed, many 1940 Jefferson nickels were melted or lost, while others sat forgotten. In jars, drawers, and old purses, some were saved unknowingly by families who lived through the war, passed down as everyday money without realizing their historical context today. When collectors rediscover these coins, they are not just finding metal, but touching a piece of American continuity, a coin that survived Depression, recovery, and global war without changing its face. In modern numismatics, the 1940 Jefferson nickel often serves as an entry point for new collectors. Because it is affordable yet rich in history, it teaches lessons about mint marks, condition, strike, quality, and historical context. Advanced collectors still pursue exceptional examples, especially those with full steps, pristine luster, and minimal marks, proving that even a common date can become special when preserved at the highest level. For storytelling purposes, the 1940 Jefferson nickel symbolizes calm before the storm. It represents America's steady pulse just before. History accelerated dramatically, and by focusing on this single year, viewers can better understand how coinage reflects not only economics and art, but emotion, national mood, and the quiet moments between major events. As the years moved forward, the 1940 Jefferson nickel quietly aged alongside the people who first used it. Children who spent these nickels on candy and soda later carried them in their pockets as adults during wartime factories and post-war prosperity. The coin became a silent witness to changing fashions, shifting technologies, and evolving American values, while its design stayed the same. The world around it transformed dramatically, making the coin a fixed point in a moving historical landscape. During World War II, the earlier copper-nickel issues like the 1940 coin remained in circulation. Even as new wartime silver alloy nickels were introduced, this created a mixed monetary environment where different compositions existed side by side. People rarely noticed the difference. But today, collectors see this overlap as an important moment in numismatic history. The 1940 Jefferson nickel, therefore, represents the last generation of traditional nickels that circulated freely before metal conservation became a national priority. Many 1940 nickels experienced heavy circulation during the 1940s and 1950s, when vending machines, parking meters, and jukeboxes depended on 5-cent pieces. Repeated mechanical use often caused rim nicks, scratches, and surface wear, which is why coins that avoided such use are especially prized. The rise of coin-operated culture during the post-war boom meant that nickels were constantly in motion, rarely resting long enough to remain pristine. By the 1960s and 1970s, coin collecting surged in popularity, and people began pulling Jefferson nickels from circulation, looking for dates, mint marks, and better condition examples. However, by this time, many 1940 nickels were already worn smooth, highlighting how active the economy had been during their early years. Collectors who discovered sharper examples realized that these coins had somehow escaped decades of use, perhaps stored away in bankrolls or personal savings, giving them an almost mysterious survival story. Educationally, the 1940 Jefferson nickel has been used in classrooms and beginner guides to teach how to identify mint marks, how to evaluate wear, and how history influences coin design. Its clear portrait and architectural reverse make it ideal for explaining obverse and reverse terminology, as well as concepts like strike quality luster and die wear, making it a foundational piece in American numismatic education. In auctions and private sales, high-grade 1940, Jefferson nickels occasionally surprise collectors by achieving strong prices, especially when certified with full steps designations. This reinforces an important lesson in numismatics. Rarity is not just about mintage numbers, but about survival condition and demand. A coin produced in the millions can still be elusive in top condition decades later. Symbolically, the coin also reflects Thomas Jefferson's enduring presence in American culture. His image on a 1940 nickel passed through the hands of a generation that would fight for democratic ideals overseas, creating a quiet parallel between the founding principles Jefferson championed and the sacrifices made by Americans during the war years. This connection adds emotional depth to the coin beyond its physical characteristics. Today, when a collector holds a 1940 Jefferson nickel, they are holding a tangible link to a pivotal era, an object that bridged depression, recovery, wartime sacrifice, and post-war growth. The coin's continued existence reminds us that history is not only preserved in documents and monuments, but also in the small, everyday items that survive long after the people who use them are gone. And this is why the 1940 Jefferson nickel continues to deserve attention, storytelling, and respect. The Jefferson nickel, first introduced in 1938, was designed to honor the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, and his iconic home, Monticello. By 1941, this coin had firmly established itself in American currency, circulating widely and reflecting a period of significant historical and economic change in the United States. The 1941 nickel was part of the first series that featured Jefferson's profile facing left on the obverse, a portrait designed by sculptor Felix Schlag after a national competition. The design emphasized Jefferson's dignified features and left a lasting impression as one of the most enduring depictions of a president on United States coinage. On the reverse, the Monticello building is depicted with remarkable detail, showing Jefferson's architectural genius. The 1941 nickel's reverse reflects a period of subtle elegance in American coinage, capturing both the simplicity and the grandeur of Jefferson's estate. That year, the coin was struck primarily in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each mint producing coins with unique, subtle characteristics that collectors cherish today. The Philadelphia Mint produced coins without a mint mark, while Denver nickels carry a D, and San Francisco examples bear an S, allowing collectors to trace the origin of each piece with precision. Economically, 1941 was a pivotal year for the United States as the nation remained on the brink of entering World War II. The nickel, composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, was essential in daily commerce, used for everything from transportation fares to small household purchases. During this time, coins like the Jefferson nickel were not only practical instruments of trade, but also cultural symbols that reflected national identity and pride. The design was appreciated for its accessibility, connecting ordinary Americans with the legacy of Thomas Jefferson and the architectural beauty of Monticello. Collectors today often look at the 1941 Jefferson nickel for its historical context as well as its numismatic characteristics. The coins from that year exhibit a range of minting variations, such as differences in striking depth and surface texture, and occasionally minor die flaws or planchet irregularities that make certain examples more desirable. Condition is critical, with well-preserved specimens fetching higher prices, particularly those that retain full detail in Jefferson's portrait and Monticello's architectural lines. During 1941, coin production was ramping up in preparation for wartime economic conditions. While the Jefferson nickel would later undergo significant changes during the war, especially in 1942 when nickel was removed from the composition to conserve metal for the war effort, the 1941 version represents the last full pre-war nickels of the original composition. This historical context adds both numismatic and cultural value to the coin. Collectors also note that many 1941 nickels circulated heavily, resulting in wear patterns that tell the story of everyday American life at the time. Coins found in pocket change, cash registers, or savings jars each carry a narrative of ordinary people navigating the challenges and routines of early 1940s America. In addition to its circulation history, the 1941 Jefferson nickel holds significance for the evolution of coin design in the United States. Felix Schlag's design was part of a broader movement during the 1930s and 1940s to modernize American coinage, replacing older designs with more contemporary and historically significant motifs. Jefferson's image was chosen not only for his presidential legacy, but also for his contributions as an architect, philosopher, and statesman. This dual symbolism made the nickel a coin that combined aesthetic appeal with educational value, providing Americans with a subtle reminder of their heritage each time they handled the coin. For collectors, understanding the 1941 Jefferson nickel involves examining the coin's condition, rarity, and provenance. Coins graded higher in the numismatic scale, such as uncirculated or mint state examples, are especially prized. Additionally, Proof versions produced for collectors showcase the detailed artistry of Schlag's design with sharply defined features and polished surfaces. These proof coins are now rare and sought after in the numismatic community, offering a glimpse into the meticulous production standards of the era. In conclusion, the 1941 Jefferson nickel is more than just a piece of currency. It represents a snapshot of American history, culture, and artistry at a critical moment in the nation's development. From its detailed depiction of Thomas Jefferson and Monticello to its role in daily commerce and its value to modern collectors, the coin embodies a rich narrative that extends far beyond its monetary value. Exploring the 1941 Jefferson nickel allows us to appreciate the artistry of American coinage, the historical significance of the early 1940s, and the enduring legacy of Thomas Jefferson as both a president and an architect of the nation's ideals. Each coin carries a story of an era, a design rooted in history, and a continuing fascination for numismatists and history enthusiasts alike, making the 1941 Jefferson nickel a treasured piece of American heritage. By 1941, the Jefferson nickel had already been in circulation for 3 years, and it was becoming a familiar sight in the hands of Americans. This period was marked by global tension as World War II raged overseas, and the United States was gearing up economically and socially for its eventual involvement. The nickel, while small in size and value, played an essential role in everyday life, reflecting both the stability of American currency and the resilience of daily commerce during uncertain times. It was a coin handled by children saving up allowances, by housewives making household purchases, and by workers paying for streetcars, snacks, and other necessities. Each nickel exchanged hands countless times, silently chronicling the lives of ordinary Americans. The Jefferson nickel's design, crafted by Felix Schlag, was part of the broader artistic movement in U.S. coinage during the 1930s and 1940s. The U.S. Mint sought designs that were historically significant, visually appealing, and educational. Jefferson, as a founding father, was not only a political figure, but also a visionary architect, and Monticello symbolized this dual legacy. The building's depiction on the reverse is precise, showing the symmetry, the portico, and the iconic dome, making it one of the more detailed structures ever placed on a U.S. coin. Collectors often note the subtle differences in the architectural details between coins from Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, which were produced under slightly different dies. 1941 also marked a key point in the Jefferson nickel's production history. The United States Mint was still using the original composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel, a formula that had been standard since 1866 for the 5-cent coin. This composition gave the coin a distinct silvery gray appearance and durability suitable for everyday handling. However, the looming war would soon force a major change, as nickel was needed for armor and weapons production. The 1941 nickel, therefore, represents the last series of pre-war coins before wartime metals restrictions began in 1942, making it historically significant as part of the last generation of traditional Jefferson nickels. From a collector's perspective, the 1941 Jefferson nickel offers numerous interesting variations. The coins can show differences in strike quality, planche color, and surface texture. Occasionally, die cracks or small flaws occurred during minting, giving certain coins rare distinctions that are highly sought after today. Coins from the San Francisco Mint, for example, often display sharper details due to stricter quality control at that facility. Meanwhile, coins from Denver and Philadelphia sometimes exhibit softer strikes, giving collectors opportunities to study how minting processes differed across locations. Culturally, the Jefferson nickel reflects America's values during the early 1940s. Jefferson himself symbolized freedom, innovation, and intellectual pursuit. Placing his likeness on a coin that circulated widely meant that Americans were constantly reminded of these ideals. Monticello, on the reverse, represented not just Jefferson's architectural skills, but also the pursuit of balance, harmony, and elegance, qualities that were aspirational for the country in a time of global instability. The 1941 Jefferson nickel also connects to a broader numismatic story. During this era, coin collecting was gaining popularity in the United States. Citizens were encouraged to save coins as a hobby, and many families built collections that often started with nickels, dimes, and pennies. The Jefferson nickel, with its educational value and attractive design, became a favorite among young collectors. Its production numbers were significant enough to keep the coin common, yet subtle variations ensured that numismatists could always find unique pieces worth studying and preserving. Additionally, the nickel serves as a marker of American industry and craftsmanship. Struck on high-quality planchets, with precise engravings and handled by advanced minting equipment of the early 20th century, the coin demonstrates the sophistication of U.S. minting techniques before wartime pressures changed the process. The way the metal was alloyed, the striking pressure applied, and the die engraving all contribute to the coin's durability and collectible appeal. Many 1941 nickels remain in excellent condition today, allowing modern collectors to hold a piece of history that has survived over 80 years of circulation. Finally, the historical significance of the 1941 Jefferson nickel is intertwined with the larger narrative of American coins and the nation's journey through a pivotal period. It bridges the gap between the pre-war economy, the looming challenges of global conflict, and the emerging modern era. It is more than just a 5-cent coin. It is a small, tangible link to the everyday lives of Americans during a time of transition, a testament to the artistry of U.S. coin designers, and a cherished item for generations of collectors who continue to study and preserve its legacy. The story of the 1946 Jefferson nickel begins in the aftermath of World War II. When the war ended in 1945, the United States returned to peacetime production, and one of the major changes affected coinage. The Jefferson nickel had been first introduced in 1938 as a replacement for the Buffalo nickel designed by James Earl Fraser. Its creation was driven by the desire to honor Thomas Jefferson, one of the most influential founding fathers whose legacy shaped the nation. The obverse of the coin features a profile of Jefferson designed by sculptor Felix Schlag, while the reverse showcases Monticello Jefferson's iconic Virginia estate. During the years of the war from 1942 to 1945, the composition of the nickel had changed due to the need for nickel in military production. The coins from those years are known as wartime nickels, containing 35% silver, 56% copper, and 9% manganese, and had a distinctive large mint mark placed above Monticello. On the other hand, the 1946 Jefferson nickel marked the first year after the war, in which the mint returned to the original pre-war composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This meant that the 1946 nickels are entirely different from the wartime nickels, both in appearance and metallic content. The end of the wartime production brought relief to coin collectors and the general public alike as the silver content was removed and the coins returned to their familiar hue. The production of the 1946 Jefferson nickel took place at 3 different mints. The Philadelphia Mint produced the bulk of the coins without a mint mark. The Denver Mint produced coins with a small D mint mark, and the San Francisco Mint also produced a smaller number with the S mint mark. The total mintage for the year was substantial, reflecting the post-war economic boom and the growing need for everyday currency as Americans resumed normal commerce. Collectors find the 1946 Jefferson nickel particularly interesting because it represents a transitional moment in American history. It bridges the era of wartime coinage and peacetime prosperity. It also provides insight into minting practices of the time, including the restoration of standard alloy composition and the careful attention to detail in the designs. The obverse profile of Jefferson remained the same, but subtle differences can be observed in the strikes and luster of coins from different mints. Sharp-eyed. Numismatists often note variations in the design details, such as the prominence of Jefferson's hairlines and the clarity of Monticello's architectural elements. These variations make the 1946 Jefferson nickel a fascinating subject for study. During this period, the Jefferson nickel also began to appear in coin collections and rolls that were carefully preserved by families across the country. The post-war era saw a growing interest in coin collecting as a hobby, spurred in part by the return of servicemen who had been introduced to coins in foreign lands during the war. The 1946 nickel often appeared alongside other post-war coins, including the Lincoln cent, Roosevelt dime, and the Washington quarter, forming a snapshot of American currency at the time. In terms of design, the Jefferson nickel is remarkable for its simplicity and elegance. Felix Schlagg's original design was chosen through a competition and became instantly iconic. The obverse shows Jefferson in a dignified pose conveying intelligence and leadership, while the reverse depicts Monticello in a way that balances architectural accuracy with artistic interpretation. Monticello itself was not as widely recognized by the public at the time as it is today, and the coin helped popularize Jefferson's home and legacy. The inscriptions include the word liberty, the date 1946, and the motto, "In God We Trust" on the obverse, and "A pluribus unum" and Monticello on the reverse. The mint marks on the reverse side indicate the production location, but collectors today pay close attention to their placement size and clarity. From a numismatic perspective, the 1946 Jefferson nickel is considered relatively common in circulated condition, yet still highly prized by collectors in uncirculated grades. Mint errors and varieties add another layer of intrigue. Some coins may exhibit slight doubling in the lettering or differences in strike depth and luster caused by variations in die preparation and use. While no extreme rarities exist for 1946 nickels, they remain a cornerstone in Jefferson nickel collections due to their historical significance and quality of design. The coins serve as tangible reminders of the nation's transition from war to peace and the enduring legacy of Thomas Jefferson. Over the years, the value of the 1946 Jefferson nickel has been influenced by condition rarity and collector demand. Circulated coins can often be found for a few dollars, while high-grade examples or coins, with exceptional luster command premium prices, dealers and collectors pay particular attention to coins that retain original mint luster, have minimal contact marks, and show no signs of cleaning or damage. Provenance and documentation also contribute to a coin's desirability, and many collectors seek coins with verified history or those obtained from notable collections. The Jefferson nickel has continued to be an integral part of American coinage, and the 1946 issue is a symbol of post-war America. It reflects both the artistic vision of its designer and the practical needs of a growing economy. Its place in history is secure, not only for its aesthetic qualities, but also for its representation of a nation emerging from conflict and embracing a new era of prosperity. The story of this coin is one of resilience, craftsmanship, and the enduring influence of historical figures whose images and homes continue to educate and inspire. By studying the 1946 Jefferson nickel collectors, gain insight into American culture history and numismatics. The coin is more than currency. It is a miniature monument to Jefferson's ideals and to the era in which it was minted. The transition from wartime alloys to traditional copper and nickel reflects broader economic and technological changes, while the continued appreciation for the coin highlights the enduring appeal of well-executed design and historical significance. Collectors today can trace the journey of the 1946 nickel from mint to circulation and finally to collections, where it remains a treasured artifact. In conclusion, the 1946 Jefferson nickel is a remarkable coin that captures a unique moment in American history. It marks the return to peacetime coinage after the challenges of wartime production. It represents a bridge between eras and a tangible connection to Thomas Jefferson's legacy. Its design continues to be admired and studied, and its place in numismatic history is secure through careful preservation. And study collectors can appreciate both the beauty and historical context of this enduring American coin. As 1946 unfolded, the United States Mint faced the challenge of stabilizing production after years of wartime pressure machinery that had been pushed to its limits during World War II now needed maintenance recalibration and careful oversight. The return to the standard copper-nickel alloy was not just a technical change, but a symbolic one, signaling that the nation no longer needed to sacrifice precious metals for military use. This made the 1946 Jefferson nickel a quiet but powerful symbol of peace and recovery, circulating through the hands of millions of Americans. The economic environment of 1946 played a major role in the large production numbers. Factories reopened consumer goods, flooded the market, and Americans began spending again after years of rationing. Coins were essential for vending machines, public transportation, payphones, and everyday purchases. The Jefferson nickel especially was heavily used because of its role in small transactions, making the 1946 issue one of the most widely circulated coins of the post-war era. At the Philadelphia Mint, workers resumed normal minting schedules without the urgency that defined wartime operations. Coins struck here often display strong strikes and smooth surfaces, though quality still varied due to aging dies. The Denver Mint continued its reputation for slightly softer strikes, particularly on Monticello's steps, a detail that modern collectors study closely. The San Francisco Mint produced fewer coins, and many of its 1946 nickels show weaker detail but attractive toning that developed over decades of storage. One of the most studied aspects of the 1946 Jefferson nickel is the Monticello steps. The steps at the base of Jefferson's home became a benchmark for strike-quality coins. With fully defined steps are rare and highly desirable, even for common date issues. In 1946, die wear and high production demands meant that many coins left the mint with incomplete steps. This has made well-struck examples especially valuable and has turned the 1946 nickel into a favorite among advanced collectors who enjoy searching rolls and collections for hidden gems. The design itself reflects mid-20th century artistic restraint. Felix Schlag's portrayal of Jefferson avoids dramatic expression, instead offering calm authority. This was intentional as the nation sought stability, reassurance, and continuity after the trauma of war. Monticello, on the reverse, reinforces ideas of home knowledge and Enlightenment values closely associated with Jefferson and deeply resonant in post-war America. During the late 1940s, many Americans unknowingly saved rolls of coins, including 1946 nickels. Banks sometimes distributed freshly minted rolls that were set aside by families as keepsakes or emergency savings. This practice has allowed modern collectors to find original uncirculated examples decades later, often with strong luster and minimal wear. These discoveries fuel the ongoing excitement surrounding Jefferson nickel collecting. From a historical standpoint, the 1946 Jefferson nickel also marks the beginning of a long, uninterrupted return to non-silver nickels. Wartime. Nickels were a temporary necessity, but their removal restored consistency to U.S. coinage. The public welcomed the familiar weight and color of the traditional nickel and vending machine. Manufacturers adjusted their equipment accordingly, making the 1946 issue essential to restoring everyday convenience. Errors and minor varieties from 1946 add further depth to its history. Some coins exhibit off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or die cracks caused by the heavy reuse of dies in high-volume production. While major varieties are scarce, these imperfections provide insight into mint operations and human involvement in the coin-making process. Each error tells a small story of pressure speed and industrial demand in a recovering nation. In the broader timeline of the Jefferson nickel series, the 1946 issue represents renewal. It stands between the silver alloy emergency years and the long stretch of standard production that would continue for decades. Collectors often view it as the true restart of the series rather than simply another date. This gives it importance beyond rarity or value, anchoring it firmly in American numismatic history. As decades passed, the 1946 Jefferson nickel slowly disappeared from circulation, replaced by newer coins. Rising metal prices, inflation, and collecting interest pulled many examples out of everyday use. By the late 20th century, finding a 1946 nickel in pocket change became increasingly uncommon, turning it into a small but exciting discovery for coin roll hunters and casual collectors alike. Today, the coin serves as a teaching tool for new collectors. It demonstrates how historical events influence coin composition, design, and production. It shows how even common coins can carry deep historical meaning and how careful observation reveals differences invisible to the untrained eye. The 1946 Jefferson nickel invites collectors to look closer not just at the coin itself, but at the era that produced it. The legacy of the 1946 Jefferson nickel continues to grow as interest in post-war American history remains strong. Each coin is a survivor of change recovery and renewed optimism. It passed through grocery stores, gas stations, diners, and movie theaters, carrying silent witness to everyday American life in the years following World War II. Through study, preservation, and storytelling, the 1946 Jefferson nickel remains alive not just as metal, but as history in the palm of a hand,